Well, hello, folks. Welcome to The Sacred Speaks. My name is John Price. I'm your host, and today there's a good show in store. First, I'm going to get to a couple of websites, then I'll get to the participant, Lisa Marchiano, and then we'll jump in. So just to point you in a couple of directions, check out the Center for Healing Arts and Sciences at the Center for HAS. A lot of cool stuff going on, an integrative wellness center here in Houston. We've got some cool programming coming on that people can become members of, and I'll let you know more about that as it comes to light. Of course, check out The Sacred Speaks at thesacredspeaks.com. Check out the Jung Center in Houston at junghouston.org. A lot of great classes, a lot of great resources there. And also Modern Nations, modernationsmusic.com. Stay tuned to the end of the episode and you'll hear the full selection of the theme music, Clouds. The song is Clouds from Modern Nations. Thanks, guys. So to Lisa Marchiano, I'd like to give you her website at Lisa, LisaMarchiano.com. The book we discuss is called The Vital Spark, Reclaim Your Outlaw Energies and Find Your Feminine Fire. It is out very soon. And I had a great chat with Lisa and I really enjoyed her book. Diving into the feminine, also fairy tales, Jungian theory. It's a fantastic presentation. She's also got a cool community she's developed called Spinning Straw. Check it out at spinningstraw.com. And it's a new online community for women that exploring fairy tales, which sounds amazing. So let me read her bio. Lisa Marchiano is an award-winning author, podcaster, certified Jungian analyst. Her highly acclaimed books draw upon the healing wisdom of fairy tales to help women connect more deeply with themselves. Lisa is a host of the popular depth psychology podcast, This Jungian Life. Check them out anywhere on any podcast affiliate. Fantastic community. With over 10 million downloads and a loyal following that includes artists, journalists, and celebrities, This Jungian Life is a top podcast in the U.S. in the health and fitness category. Lisa obtained her BA from Brown University. She holds a Master's of International Affairs from Columbia and a Master of Social Work from NYU. She trained at the Interregional Society of Jungian Analysts. In addition to her books, Lisa's writing has appeared in numerous publications, including the Journal of Analytical Psychology. She's a sought-after speaking workshop facilitator who's lectured widely both in the U.S. and abroad. Lisa, it was great to get to know you, and I really appreciate your time. And your publishing company is fantastic. These are folks that don't get enough attention. So thanks again for arranging this time. Really enjoyed the chat. And for you, the listener, there's more coming up on this subject. I think there are about 4 or 5 interviews where we dig into the feminine. A number of them coming up from religious scholars to my wife, Lilith Scott Price, and also really just a ton of people who've been digging into these questions about certainly gender, sexuality, culture, the similarities and differences between the sexes and the various genders. Just such a great exploration. What a great time we're in. Unstable, but great to be exploring and questioning some of these kind of core belief systems. Everything's up for question. So thanks for being here today. Of course, check out The Sacred Speaks. Like, share, send along, comment, do whatever you like. And stay tuned, because the winter was kind of a dormant time. I rested for the longest night, and we're back in action. And I've got a number of people signed up and lined up for the next few months. So tons of content coming out here. For now, leave it there. Stay tuned. Okay, Lisa Marchiano. We have a bit of time to jump in together, and I'm excited that you're here. Thank you. As I was sharing with you, as we were getting acquainted a bit, I've really enjoyed reading your book, and we're going to talk a lot about the structure and what you were getting. But so far, I'm just really glad to meet you, and your name has come up a number of times since we scheduled this in a number of different contexts. So it's one of those times when all of a sudden I'm seeing Lisa everywhere.
Uh-oh.
All good things.
Okay.
Well, let's get started. I want to set the stage a bit. If we can just dive right in. Cool. Of course, one of the things that you're writing about is this feminine wisdom, this feminine wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And
And as I was reading it, I related on so many levels. And so I both saw the sameness and also the difference. And so I want you to talk a little bit about the masculine and the feminine, some confusing subjects.
Well, I mean, I think that this is such a thorny area, obviously. And I mean, I think a lot of us Jungians kind of have a problem with it too, because we like to throw around these words, the feminine and the masculine, and we kind of know what we mean by them. I mean, when we speak about it like that, especially, the feminine with a capital F, we're talking about a psychological principle.
Yeah.
And, I think it's one of those bedeviling things, because we all kind of know what we mean. But when you try to sort of actually nail down what we're actually talking about, you start to get into this territory of like really awful regressive sexual stereotypes. And you're like, oh, how did I get there? But just to say for a minute, and I always want to try to be like practical, because it can be very easy in this space, for me anyway, to kind of get up into the stratosphere with these beautiful kind of spiritual ideas. And it's like, no, what are we actually talking about here? So, I've, in my practice, in my clinical work, I've worked with a lot of women and some men. And the truth is that there is more of the same there than is different in terms of the kinds of psychological things that people struggle with. I would say that in my experience, women maybe struggle with, it's like a question of degree, like women maybe struggle more with certain things, or when an issue comes up around this, they struggle with it in a slightly different way, say, than men struggle with it. So there is something there, I think, about sort of women's psychology. And in terms of what you referenced as sort of feminine wisdom, I mean, the feminine as a psychological principle is something that we all have access to, whether or not we're male or female. But it's something like being receptive and being nurturing and being connected. That's being able to swim with that which is implicit rather than explicit, seeing the whole rather than getting down into the weeds and seeing the parts. That these are some of the psychological attributes that we associate with the feminine principle.
Can you do the same treatment to the masculine principle?
Yeah. I mean, so I think it's sort of ordering, or kind of, outward focused, or focused on details, and focused on the explicit. And somewhere I've got this whole list I made. That which is more directed and linear rather than kind of circular. There's like, go through like probably 30 of these traits. And I think a lot of us would go, yeah, that's more masculine. And okay, that one's more feminine. But that's not saying that, oh, men are like this and women are like this, right? It's just that there are these kinds of, maybe these sort of two modes. And as women, I believe that for whatever reason, it is easier to access one than the other. And probably the same thing is true for men. But I actually believe that our psychological work, because we're trying to evolve toward wholeness, is to develop that in us, which is other.
Yeah. Go where you don't want to go.
Yeah, which is a very Jungian idea.
It is. And we say to people like, so what do you not want to talk about today? Or
right. Yeah.
Who's the person you don't want me to see?
I love that.
You did that through the book. And so so jumping into some of that, because you hit on a couple of emotional experiences that I think are so complex and difficult for people to understand. Excuse me. But you begin right out of the gate with Lilith. Talk about this character, the unbridled life urge.
Well, so Lilith in medieval Jewish mysticism was Adam's first wife, right? She was his first partner, and he wanted to, she wanted to have sex and have her be on top, essentially. And he said, no, 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 you have to be underneath. And she said, well, forget that. I'm going away. I'm out of here. And, God sent these angels to try to coax her back. And she was like, nope. And then she became demonic. And so Lilith was a big, big demon in medieval Judaism. And people, would sort of had all these rituals to kind of keep her at bay. But it was eventually believed that one of the things that she would do is wait at the bedside of the laboring mother and then snatch the baby away.
Mm-hmm.
And so you were always trying to propitiate this force. She could also, in one of her guises, she could be, an incredible sexual seductress who could kind of lead men astray. So she was really sort of very, very demonic and dark, actually.
And you're talking about this feminine character as a need to reclaim lost aspects of self. So
right.
that theory of amputation, or it is really where you set up this outlaw energies is what you call them.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
I love the wildness.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, women had better be pretty nurturing, warm, attuned, caregiving, right? Because if we weren't, we probably wouldn't have survived, because there's this very important thing that has to happen for humanity to continue, and that's the children have got to get raised. So when women kind of lean into more of their Lilith qualities, that actually is kind of, I think it's probably perceived as very threatening to the continuation of society. Or certainly it would have been at the time that myth was alive for people. And so, Lilith has kind of been reclaimed in the 20th and 21st centuries as a kind of feminist icon. It's like, no, I'm not going to subordinate myself to anyone else's needs or desires, which is a wonderful thing. I mean, I kind of champion her in the setup in the book, and at the same time, I acknowledge that more kind of, I'm going to say kind of maybe typical or even stereotypical way of being nurturing, kind, agreeable, warm, attuned, subordinate, friendly, whatever, that's really important. Like, we need to have that too, and not just for other people, but as I say in the book, and this is just self-evidently true, that the caregiving roles that we all play, men and women, at the end of the day, that is often the most important thing to us. It's like, you ask anyone, what's the most important thing you did in your life? It's like, well, it's my kids, or my fondest memories are, caring for other people. That's a very inherently meaningful thing. And it is important. And in order to kind of fully develop ourselves, we need to have access to the kind of what I refer to as kind of Lilith qualities.
You say that with such experience at heart, I hear the feeling, and I wonder, like, your energy to write this book, because it really does read as a process to guide somebody through. I mean, I certainly went on the ride with you. So would you go into that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have had my own experience of having to struggle to access these qualities. And I feel like I've sat with women doing it. And I guess part of my question, maybe even when I started writing the book, is this just the way that I see things because this was my experience, which is always, I mean, who said that every theory is actually a confession?
Research is me search. Yes. Yes.
But I think I can honestly say that this does reflect the experiences of probably just about every woman I've worked with in one way or another. I mean, some women have no trouble being angry, but they have a lot of trouble maybe with some other quality that I bring up, like finding their desire, believing in their desire, whatever. So I'm not saying that it's a kind of a cookie cutter, but I do think that I may be articulating something that is more or less universal, at least for women today. And so, yes, I think that it has been a struggle for me to find the room maybe to develop these capacities and claim them, develop them, and feel comfortable utilizing them. So I almost think about these things as like tools. For example, ruthlessness. And it's so funny because I've started giving presentations on the book, and both times that I've given presentations, I've had someone say, okay, the first time it was ruthlessness. Someone said, well, I like what you're saying, but I could never be ruthless. I don't think we should be encouraging people to be ruthless. And then another time I presented, and the woman said, well, I like what you're saying, but if you tell women that they should be tricksters, that's terrible. You're teaching them to be manipulative. I would never want my daughter to learn to be a trickster. And I said, well, being able to be a trickster has saved my life. I hope I've taught my daughter to be a trickster at times, right? So it's this differentiation between like, this is who you should be, and you should go through the world being ruthless, or you should go through the world being tricky. But no, it's like a tool in your toolbox. It is an arrow in your quiver that when you need to access that, you can find it. That's really what I'm talking about. And it has been hard for me to learn how to find ruthlessness or kind of a justified sense of my own anger, or a real claiming of my desire, or to really feel like it's okay to not be agreeable.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like what you're saying in that there seems to be a cultural norm to these various admissible and not admissible emotional interior experiences that seems to be something that happens in the creation of self or the individual, So you're labeling a couple of, and I think just while we're on the subject, I'd like to dive into that, because you offer up, trickster, there was shrewdness, there was the rage, there was also desire and sexuality and all kinds of other aspects. So can we talk about that as broad the individual's life, the woman's life, but the self in all of us?
Well, one of the things that I say in the introduction that feels, I will say that I wasn't sure what this book was about until like a few weeks before I ended the first manuscript, and that's when I came up with this sentence, and I'm like, yes, that's it. It was really a relief. But qualities like warmth and nurturance and attunement are those that help us get and stay connected with other people. But things like anger, desire, sensuality, ruthlessness, authority help us get and stay connected to ourselves. So that's when you kind of talk about the broadening of the personality. It's like, yes, it's important to be in relationship. It's incredibly important to be in relationship. I mean, we are relational beings. And can we also claim that relationship with ourself? And to do so, we need certain skills. And when I talk, you asked about ruthlessness. When I talk about that, for example, I'm not actually talking about sort of, developing a stomach for administering torture. I'm talking about, sort of being able to do the hard thing that hurts someone else, even when it's the right thing to do. So, I think I give this example in the book. It's a fairly small example, but when I was in my 20s, I was seeing a therapist, and it just wasn't working. It wasn't a good fit. And so I had to tell this person that I didn't want to see them anymore. And I knew it was going to kind of be a blow to their ego. And I knew that they were going to be upset about it. And they were. It's like my perception was accurate. But I was really like, oh, maybe I shouldn't say anything. Because, it's like, no, you've got to just do it, because who is it serving not to do that? It's serving them, but not really. So that's what I mean by a capacity for ruthlessness.
Yeah, ruthless against the part of yourself that's telling you to be nice and kind, all that stuff, and don't ruffle feathers.
Right.
And that, I guess, the outlaw energy really does. I'm so attracted to that. I think that we need to be wilder, and we need to leave room for wild space.
Yes. And Jung talks about that all the time. He talks about the importance of being connected to the instincts.
Yeah. What'd you
Sorry.
learn? I mean, no, go there, because I'm curious, and every time I get to talk to an author, uh, my colleague and dear friend Jeff Kripal says that writing is really coming to understand what it's not so much communicating information in its best of times. So I'm wondering how the book influenced your own process and what it stirred up for you. Not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily personal content, but just,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that feels really right to me, that it's always kind of a process of discovery. And in some ways, I think I had been working on these ideas for a long time at an unconscious level.
Mm.
Like, again, within my own life, I would say that it's been a major life theme for me, this issue of kind of claiming authority. Yeah, that's been a major, major life theme. And, one that I'm glad to say I've made some headway with.
Mm.
I'm sure I've got a ways to go, but I know I have a ways to go. But it's sort of like these ideas were alive, but they weren't formulated. And that's what writing forces you to do, right? Is to
Mm-hmm.
formulate it, to be able to make it explicit. And there's that, in some ways, this knowledge was implicit, but then I had to make it explicit. And that is always an unbelievably kind of satisfying thing to do. And it's this actually, I think in a way, it's a kind of merger of the feminine and the masculine,
Mm-hmm.
to take like intuitive knowledge and put it into language.
Theorem and
That,
proof. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
so it's so synthesizing,
Mm-hmm.
in that way. And in some sense, that is what we're supposed to be doing in psychological work.
It is. And even these, we would, undesirable, the undesirable emotions like jealousy and envy and greed and
Mm-hmm.
rage, all the stuff you write about. What do you feel called to do? I mean, I feel that I love the treatment that you did on all these emotions, but I'm gathering that what's happened is you've seen these struggles in people's lives through your clinical practice, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. Yeah.
So yeah, let me just jump back in here because I want to
Mm-hmm.
get into, you talk at the very beginning, you talk a little bit, I want to go traditional Jungian for a little bit, because
Absolutely.
early on you talk about mother and father archetypes and how they come up in the context of intermasculine dynamics. Would you
Mm-hmm.
talk about archetypes, how you understand them, and how we can kind of use that knowledge to apply it to our lived experience?
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess kind of like what's important to know about archetypes is that they're psychic universals. So
Mm.
Jung says that they are there a priori. So we are born with them in our psyche in some sense. And if you want to think about it a little bit more metaphysically, they just exist sort of outside of, I don't know, any individual psyche. So that's a pretty cool thought. And then the other thing that's important about them, I think, in the life of an individual, is that they have a tremendous amount of power. There's something about the archetype that is numinous, that feels awe-inspiring, that kind of connect us with a certain kind of psycho-spiritual energy that infuses life with mystery, symbol, and meaning. And so when the archetypes show up, now it's not all sunshine and roses, right? Because the archetypes always have a positive pole and a negative pole. And an archetype can show up when an archetype constellates, Jung would say. They can move events, people, individuals, nations really powerfully. So one of his famous essays is called Wotan. And
Mm-hmm.
it's about what happened to Germany in the 30s. And he links it with Wotan, the Norse god. So he says, this archetype kind of got loose and went rampaging through Germany, and it was incredibly, incredibly destructive.
Mm-hmm.
But in a similar way too, we can feel deeply, deeply moved by the constellation of the positive pole of an archetype, and that can bring healing and redemption and move societies and individuals in really positive directions as well. So it can happen in the life of the collective, and it can also happen in our individual lives.
Yeah, how do you see this influencing I'm just wondering about your kind of conceptualization of this Freudian Jungian collision between early life experience and what we traditionally consider Jungian theory.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
you talk a little bit about that. I'm interested how you use that clinically, and then how you've brought your clinical awareness into this book,
Mm-hmm.
to a large swath of people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you're interested in this idea about kind of early life development and how
Yeah,
that, yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, what Freud, of course, kind of said that we're totally cooked by the time we're 5,
Mhm.
I think, is what he says. And Jung was one of these theorists who really believed that we continue to grow and change throughout the lifespan. And I think they're both right in a way,
Mhm.
I mean, we do, there are insights from, say, neurobiology that really support some of what Freud says about the importance of the early years, for example, in laying down patterns of object relations and attachment styles and that sort of thing. But Jung was also right that we do continue to grow and change, and his conception of psychological growth, I think, was much broader than Freud's. And what Jung would say about early life development is that we come into the world with an a priori experience, say, of mother. So we have installed within us a kind of expected pattern of mother that is the experience of the archetype. So we're kind of wired to receive that pattern called mother. And then our individual experience of that archetype is mediated by personal interactions with our mother or mothering institutions like a school, or allo parents that might play a mothering role. So that one might have, for example, a positive mother complex that has the archetypal mother at its core, but is based on, largely positive experiences with the personal mother in childhood. So your mother basically met your needs and was basically reliable and that sort of thing. Then you kind of get this programming installed that Jungians call a positive mother complex. So then you feel like the world is more or less a friendly place. You expect people to like you. You kind of expect your needs to get met, and that generally tracks pretty positive for you in the world. That's not a bad place to start off from, although there are downsides to a positive mother complex too.
There sure are.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still have a private practice? Do you still
Oh,
work
yes.
clinically?
Oh,
You do?
yes. Mm-hmm.
How long have you done that?
I have been, I've had a private practice since 2000.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's a radical experience, isn't it?
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Um, chose some of the Jungian piece. I mean, so also we need to talk about your podcast also a bit. And one of the things I love about what you do, certainly in the podcast, but also in the book, is talk a lot about fairy tales. And you obviously it's very central. Produced a ton of fairy tales. Would you talk about why that is and what the role of the fairy tale is and why it deserves such a central role in your book?
Oh, well, they're just so great. They're just so great.
I
I
can
love fairy
tell. Yeah.
tales. God,
Yeah.
they're just so great. Yeah, so I mean, Jungians like archetypal material, these expressions of universal images that occur in myths, fairy tales, religious symbols. So fairy tales are, one aspect of these kind of universal images. They're a storehouse of psychological patterns. I mean, for example, Cinderella, that's a famous one that we all know. There's a way that that story describes a particular psychological experience that many of us have had a version of. And it's not even just necessarily having a terrible mother or a stepmother or something. It's more like an experience of inner disenfranchisement.
Mm-hmm. Oof. All right.
And then how we overcome that.
I'll bite. That's good. Tell me more about inner disenfranchisement. Good.
Yeah, well, if you think about Cinderella from a a purely symbolic standpoint. And what I mean by that is we assume that every character in the tale is an aspect of a single psyche. So it's kind of similar to how we work with dreams.
Mm.
It's not so much that Cinderella has to meet the prince to be rescued from her terrible stepsisters. It's how, if it's a symbolic language for for someone's life, it would be like, how is that person um, disregarding their own needs so that they're essentially treating themselves like a scullery maid?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so a lot of us do something like that. And I've seen men do that, but I think it's probably more common and more marked in the life of a woman. So for example, if you have someone who maybe feels very maybe let's I'm going to make up a little hypothetical case. Let's say
Mm-hmm.
that you've got a woman who is very talented and very intelligent and very ambitious, because a lot of times if we're talented and intelligent, we also have a kind of inborn need to express some of that. But she believes, for one reason or another, perhaps because she's been told by the culture, perhaps this was in her family, but also this may be just something that's in her psyche, that she needs to subordinate her needs and mostly make herself available to other people. So instead of maybe pursuing a career as a writer, she becomes a kindergarten teacher. And she has to go in, she doesn't particularly like kids, but she's got to go in day out, day in, day out, and kind of herd these little kids. And, supposedly this is virtuous. But what she's doing actually is taking her own sort of inner, she's kind of behaving a little bit like the terrible stepsisters in the story. That she's taking this incredible potential and talent that she has and making herself, swab the floors with it. By the way, I'm not there. This is no dig against any kindergarten teacher. It's just that we're all called to different things.
Yes.
And if you're called to be a kindergarten teacher, then that's a beautiful thing. If you're called to be something else, then and
It's
you're
hell.
a kindergarten and you're a kindergarten teacher because you think you should be,
Yeah.
then you're treating yourself like a scullery maid. And you've got to figure out how to meet your own inner prince.
Yeah. It's so the gender conversation is so tense. Like
So
we just
hard.
and we can't have it.
I'll go there. Go,
It's
throw it
so
at me.
yeah. So I just immediately think about the same kind of dynamic that shows up in our culture that says that our value is attached to the amount of money,
Mm-hmm.
and that we are all living as an indentured servant to this idea or ideal that anybody who's worked with anybody who has money knows very quickly that money does not eradicate suffering. And so there's a kind of allegiance to that culturally identified roadmap, like destination. And so what I think in so much of what I heard in your book is that you're talking about disrupting all of those inevitabilities. I do want to know fundamentally, like, two things. I mean, with gender in mind and with this masculine feminine dynamic in mind, where does our culture go wrong? Can we critique? Because yeah.
Well, so I think for sure a lot of this is cultural,
Yeah.
but I don't think all of it is cultural. And there is a way that one of the things that I want to do in my book is say, yeah, a lot of it's cultural, and that just sucks. Let's get on with it.
Yeah. Okay. Say.
Well, the thing is, if you just say, "Look, it sucks being a woman," and it surely does. I have some young women in my practice who work in corporate environments, and it's like, oh boy, it sounds like it hasn't really changed. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you speak up, you're a bitch. If you don't speak up, you wind up just making the coffee. These kinds of things. I mean, these are real things, and
Yes.
if we just say, oh God, it's the patriarchy, it's the culture. In I mean, yes, but then you've also disenfranchised yourself by as soon as you say that, as soon as you say it's all the culture, you have put yourself in the role of a victim, and you have left yourself with little to no agency, because the only way to fix the culture, how would we do that? How would we fix the whole culture? Are we going to do that tomorrow? No, we're probably not going to do it in the next 20 years.
Yeah.
So if you're a young woman and you're in this, office environment where if you speak up, you're a bitch. And if you don't speak up, you make the coffee, then you can rail against the patriarchy all you want. And surely a lot of it is justified. But how does that help you? Other than maybe make you feel angry and spent.
Right.
And what I'm interested in is, okay, but where are you in that, in this situation? In some sense, the situation's a bit of a given. What are you going to do about it? And that's why in the first chapter, I mean, one of those central ideas in the book, which was not my idea, but I loved it when I came upon it and gratefully borrowed it, is this idea of a worthy opponent.
Mm-hmm. I love that, by the way.
Yeah.
And
yep.
This is where I really felt energetically aligned. I want that.
Yeah. Yes.
It's true. I want that. Like it's all the ways that we dodge each other that become problematic. Really meet somebody who's just like working to be authentic and genuine. It's a beautiful thing.
I'll give you a worthy opponent story from my own life that
Awesome.
I wish I had put in the book, and I didn't, but if I ever get to revise it, I'll put it in the book. My husband has always been very concerned about money. Okay. He's a very kind of frugal guy. And at one point I was in analytic training, which is in itself expensive, but I was able to kind of cover the cost of it through my private practice. But when it came time to take the big exams, or these big exams that you take about, 2/3 of the way through the process, called the propaedeuticum.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of studying, and you've got to do a lot of consultation, and you've got to order a lot of, extra reading materials. So between extra time for the babysitter and traveling to have special consultations with different analysts about, learning dream interpretation or whatever it is, I needed some money. I didn't have any money in my account, and I needed $10,000 to do this. And so I was like, I don't want to ask my husband because he's going to give me a really hard time. So I was a trickster, and I asked my dad. Mm-hmm. And my dad said, sure, I'll lend you the money. So I took $10,000 from my dad to pay for this. Mm-hmm. And, as one would expect, and as I think I knew would happen, my husband, I mean, you don't hide $10,000, he's like, where's this $10,000 coming from? So he found out about it, and he was understandably very upset, which is completely correct, right? Doing something like that as a spouse it's not cool, right? What I did was not cool. And he got understandably upset. And I just said to him, I needed the money, and I didn't want to deal with your pushback, because he would have questioned me, like, is this worth it? And I felt like I couldn't tolerate that kind of questioning, because I was having a hard time believing in myself as it was. It was hard for me to think about saying, no, you've got to trust me. This is money well spent. I wasn't, I was kind of terrified, and I wasn't in a good space for that. So I said, I didn't want to deal with your pushback. And he said, then you should just push harder.
Wow. Yes.
Which was a great thing to say.
Yeah.
Right. He was saying, all right, he didn't disagree with me. He didn't say, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. He was like, yeah, I would have pushed back. I would have screamed, my husband's Sicilian. He would have waved his arms and gotten loud and said, oh, what are we doing? This isn't a good idea. He would have done that. But what he was inviting me to do is stand my ground and come back at him and say, no, you're wrong, buddy. This is a good way to spend $10,000. And it was, by the way, I passed all my exams. But
yeah, totally. Yes. There's a real distinction here that's important about, because we run the risk of is it manipulation, or is it this, and when is it harm to self and when is it other? And the framework that you're using really is in taking risk in service to some
Yes.
goal, but also
Yes.
keeps you in relationship to people that are, it's not sociopathic,
Right.
as you
Right.
said earlier.
Right. Well, there's a couple things in there. I mean, I think, my husband was encouraging me to be a worthy opponent,
Yeah.
right? I didn't really have access to that in a way. Well, could I have pushed myself and done it, like had that conversation, maybe I could have and I should have.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel capable, so I played the trickster. But and this is where people say, oh, the trickster, oh, you're being manipulative. It's like, well, yes,
Mm-hmm.
and like you're saying, it's not about, hey, go out there and just be manipulative for its own sake or for selfish ends, but in service to something larger.
Yeah, like when is lying okay?
Yeah.
All that, these great moral
Right.
conversations,
Right.
like this is Kohlberg was looking at that, the moral development and what's
Yes.
that stuff is fascinating, and we get stuck in little moralisms, where nuance goes away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you need to lie.
Sometimes you do.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do.
I tell parents a lot, that somebody will say they're manipulating me, and it's like, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
Manipulation, you manipulate them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We call it healthy manipulation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
So earlier you took this on, and I wanted to get a little deeper about this idea of the cultural blame and the patriarchy, that I love what you're saying. It's kind of like a yes, and given drama, where is your personal responsibility?
And your agency, because maybe they're the same thing, where you have responsibility is also where you can be agentic, where you can change the outcome. And you may not be able to change the outcome in lots of ways, but maybe there's a place where you can, for example, I don't know, if I had just folded and said, well, I can't really afford to that $10,000. So I guess, maybe I won't study for the exams, but sort of by hook or by crook, I was going to figure out how to pass those exams. Right.
Yes.
And that's that agency. And I kind of did it in whatever way I could at the time. And it would have been better if I could have done it in a conscious way. Or a more forthright way, but I did what I needed to do. So it is about because I am interested in, as an individual therapist, right? I am interested in the outcomes for individuals. And yes, it would be good to reform culture, but I'm interested in the people that are in my office and what's going to happen to them next week and next month and next year. And I am interested in people self-actualizing. I am interested in seeing people reach their potential. And what do you have to do that? Sometimes you have to be furious. Sometimes you have to be ruthless. Sometimes you have to be tricky and manipulative. And again, I think the ethical stance is, what is this in service to?
Great question.
And if it's in service to your own unfolding, really and truly, then we shouldn't let, sometimes an overly rigid adherence to mores can be a kind of defense against the risk that it takes to fully be oneself.
And in steps sexuality. I have to say that your treatment of sexuality was extremely refreshing, and I immediately was excited for having this conversation. It's so important. Like my wife and I work in this space of healing, and we do a lot, have recently done a bit of gender work in reconciliation, and this crew called Jerry, and it's so totally obvious is core models for embodiment, for sensuality, for sexuality, and that there's something you said that's very important about the way men tend to approach the female or feminine sexuality. And I thought that's a public service announcement if I've ever heard one. So I wonder if you just explore that a bit and talk about this kind of issue with our sexuality that gets pushed down into the unconscious.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I loved that chapter actually. I love that the
I
story that
felt
I
that.
use
Yeah.
for that it, it's, but I do think that, I mean, if part of my thesis in the book is that men and women are different, like perhaps inherently so, and perhaps not just due to culture, at least some of it.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, is that ever true in sex, because we're just, we're different. Men and women are just really different sexually. And not just because we have different parts, but because, boy, they operate really differently. And I think that, men, as I said, I don't know if you will find this, insulting, but men are kind of simple. It's like it's pretty easy to figure out what makes what,
I
what
think
works for a guy, and
guy who is honest says, "Yeah,
yeah,
no offense, I promise that's
right.
totally true." Yes.
But for women, our sexual response is much more varied. It varies a lot from individual to individual. I think it probably varies a lot over the lifetime. It can vary from week to week, and
Yes.
it's a little mysterious. And
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
and I really find that a lot of men, I think, don't understand how different we are.
Mm-hmm.
And don't understand that the things that first, and from woman to woman, I mean, so different. Whereas men are probably kind of in a narrower band in terms of kind of what works. For women, it's just, I think it's really, really broad. And so, if a woman is not really prepared to work with a man to help him understand her, and if the man is not kind of open to understanding that, then, I mean, we're sort of set up for frustration and disappointment a lot of times. And it's really, it's a very tender thing for men and women, because all of us, we want to feel desired and appreciated and loved, and we may have very different expectations from each other if we're talking about heterosexual relationships, about how that's supposed to happen, or how we're supposed to make that happen. And I do think that for women, because of this kind of, I want to say, like, inherent, innate, biological difference between men and women, it's pretty easy for us to, like, again, if we're talking heterosexual relationships, I know it works, let me just do that. I'm tired, let's just get it over with. And then it's like, do we ever really think, well, what would feel good to me? What would I like? Could I first of all take the time to figure that out? And then could I ask for that in a way that's not like in passing, but really sort of demand from my partner that he meet me there? I think that's hard for a lot of women.
Yeah, and to this point, I think it's because, and I'll just project here, men have a tendency to project their process and desires onto women, and so therein lies.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Thank you. You sum that up much more succinctly than I did. But yes, men assume that we work like they do, and we don't, or at least most of us don't. Maybe some of us do, but most of us don't.
Yeah, and so herein lies, which is when women start behaving in ways that they think the man wants to receive them, and that creates this. Speak to that, because that was the second point that I thought stood out in that chapter that I loved so much.
Yeah, that if we're just simply trying to meet his desires, or kind of fall into some sort of fantasy that we assume he has, then we just get lost as individuals, and it's not a true meeting either, because he maybe has a fantasy about us, and we're not being honest about what where we are and what we want, and likewise we might have a fantasy about what he wants or what he wants us to be. And if there's not room to say, well, wait a minute, where are we in this? So, one of the things that I talk about in that chapter is this desire for mutuality. Not just, well, let me be here to meet your needs and kind of service you, or, whatever that might mean. But let's have a truly mutual experience, a difficult thing. a difficult thing, especially I think in heterosexual relationships.
Well, you said that. Could you broaden this out? Like for those who are listening and saying, yeah, what about all these different kinds of sexualities and of gender and sex? How do you map that on here?
Well, one of the things that comes up in that chapter is the story of a woman that I worked with who had a sort of an emotional affair with a woman. She'd always been married to a man, but she had this very intense attraction to a young woman, and it just really changed the way she understood herself sexually. She didn't leave her husband. She never even acted on it. And it's not like she sort of decided, oh gosh, I'm a lesbian. But the relationship, the crush, the attraction kind of opened into this fantasy realm that was very, very different for her and allowed her to experience herself and her desire in a really new way. And if you look at the research, for example, I mean, I think this is pretty widely known, but I did check it and it's there. Lesbians report having more orgasms, and it's probably because women partners are more willing to kind of do the work to pleasure each other. And also, as you were saying before, about kind of people projecting their preferences onto their partner. I mean, it's a lot easier to understand what a woman wants if you're a woman. If you have a woman's body, you may be able to read a woman's body better. And perhaps that same thing is true for male same-sex couples. So, there is something very hard about trying to manage heterosexual sex, I think.
Well, but you said it there, I think, really well, is that if you're participating in the sexual experience by trying to fulfill your definition of pleasure is, and you're not involved in the mutual exploration of what that is, there is a very general statement that doesn't need any gender or sex attached to it. So
right.
there.
That's great. Yeah.
Really well. You're talking about meeting in a kind of mutual tension in general.
Yeah. Maybe what we're getting to, and I appreciate the way you phrase that, is real attention requires a kind of well, I'm going to say radical curiosity about the other person, regardless of sex, right? Regardless of gender or sex. It's like,
not just getting pleasure, but playing. And you put that at the beginning of the chapter, I think, in your introduction. You were talking about play and sensuality and sexuality in the same kind of structure. So before we jump off that topic, because I know we've got to finish in a little bit, just as again, I think these are valuable because I talk with a lot of women about needing to find their sacred community. And so, of course, one of the narratives around that is the red tent. And you said it earlier about kind of being oriented to mothering. Talk about the need, or maybe even the shadow or the struggle for women congregating, the feminine congregating, what shadows tend to emerge, and how might people go about engaging in those communal experiences with awareness so it doesn't play out.
Well, yeah, I think I think shadow is inevitable. I mean, I I love women's communities. I actually run women's retreats, and I have an online women's fairy tale space too, where we talk about a different fairy tale every month. And I love that. And those women's retreats are just so really magical. So there's something about being with women that is really profound and necessary, I think. And I think it always has been. Like, women have always kind of needed their own spaces. I think men really need their own spaces too. And those have been, time honored. So, we need this. And I think there can be problems with both all male spaces and all female spaces. I think that some of the shadow of women's spaces is, the kind of relational aggression that women are known for, that is a real thing. Women are not saints, and we can be pretty ruthless with each other in these kind of underhand, really kind of cruel, let's say cruel to each other in these in this sense of kind of relational aggression. I think that sometimes the problem with spaces that are overly, so another shadow of sort of the feminine is there's such a thing as too much good mother, which I mean goes right to my book, right? Because in some sense, if the good mother stuff is the nurturing and the warm and the agreeable and the friendly and then you could say that the good father is some of the other things, like being shrewd and being following your desires and being authoritative and that sort of thing. So, I mean, you may know this as a psychologist. I mean, psychology is generally a profession of the good mother, but a lot of times therapists, fall into being too much of the good mother, where you're the therapist who's just always, you're just always validate and you never challenge, and you just, you empathize. So easy to do that as a therapist. And most of us who go into this profession go into it because we like to be the good mother. And we want to be comforting and nurturing and validating. Yeah. But you don't help someone grow if you never confront them. So I think that I'm maybe wandering a little bit far from your question, but I think it is relevant. I think in certain organizations, for example, that are too heavily female, I think good organizations are probably balanced, Yeah. I have no data on that. I'm just making that up, but I'd be curious to know if there was data. But I suspect that they'd be balanced, because if you have too much positive mother in an organization, then I don't know, then it might look like people can just not show up at work and say, I wasn't feeling well. And it's like, well, no, we have a contractual arrangement here where you have to come to work. And, if you're sick, you call out. I mean, maybe that's a little bit of a pat example, but I think that attitude can sometimes occur in organizations that are heavily female, and that it can get in the way of achieving the organizational goals. I think I've seen that. So and listen, I'm in the, I'm definitely in the sort of nurturing, empathizing, all the rest of that camp. But the older I get, the more I see, oh yeah, it's a good thing that there's someone, kind of lowering the boom, saying, no, we got to do this. It's like, yeah, that's necessary too. So it's the both and.
Oh, amen to that. Well, we've got just a few minutes, and I want you to be able to give a bit of a, let folks know what you're up to and what's going on, and, and what you hope the book will accomplish for folks that find it.
Well, so the book is called The Vital Spark, Reclaim Your Outlaw Energies and Find Your Feminine Fire, and it will be on sale on February 6th, and it's available for pre-order now. And I guess my hope for it is that it will resonate with people. My first book, Motherhood, I heard so many great stories of like, this really brought me out of a dark place when I was reading it. Listen, books have saved my life more than once. Yeah. And that's probably why I write. And so when I hear from someone, that my book sort of metaphorically saved their life, nothing makes me happier. So I hope it, metaphorically saved lots of people's lives. And awesome. I also have a podcast called This Jungian Life. It's a weekly podcast that I do with two fellow Jungian analysts. My website is lisamarchiano.com. And if you're interested in my women's fairy tale group, that's called spinningstraw.com.
Well, thank you. We've got two Jungians in this practice, and
Oh, great.
Your crew and the podcast. It's very well received, and I'll certainly point everybody in that direction. But for now, Lisa, thank you for your time. This is thanks for the opportunity. I've learned so much from reading your book, so I'm feeling grateful.
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation. Okay.
controls your dreams, persuade